This is another one of those strange synchronicities, and it it's where you you find yourself thinking, my goodness, is there some force at work? I ordered something on the internet the other day, and it arrived. The postman came. We had a nice little chat. He's a good fella. Handed me the packet, and I thought, marvellous, I know what that is. Opened it up and put the news on in this country, and the Prime Minister had gone for a snap election. Nobody saw that coming. I didn't see it coming. The people who put this on eBay didn't see it coming, and the postman didn't see it coming. But here we are with a marvellous model that I had as a kid, and somehow it seems weirdly significant. So we'll be making this while I'm doing the brum bar. Things are drying and all of that. We'll be making this one, and we'll be enjoying it because obviously I think our government is wonderful. I think our governmental system is wonderful, and I wouldn't dream of comparing them to the naughty old French nobility who spent all their time gathering wealth, not paying taxes, and forcing the King of France to raise taxes constantly. I wouldn't dream of making comparisons with such people. There we are. So it's obviously second hand. It's come in IKEA bags. I'm going to get some of the parts out so we can have a look. A classic though, an absolute classic, a work of genius. Right, here's some of the little bits. The huge other irony about the guillotine is everybody associates it with the French Revolution. Obviously it got put through its paces then, but it was designed for the king who came before the French Revolution, the King of France who came before, who was living in the Enlightenment, and he wanted a humane and enlightened way of executing people. Something quick and clean, minimising suffering, because he realised that you know, if you have a horrible way of executing people, people won't look favourably upon you, which is very, very sensible. Unfortunately, he was turned upon his nephew, who was the subsequent king, and his wife. So let's build ourselves an enlightened and humane machine. And good old polar lights for reissuing this one. Well done, because it's a really different thing. And I get a bit, every so often I get a bit bored of you know, the standard stuff. Green is a very common colour, although this is going to be brown, which isn't much better. Do a car, you say? Oh, I hate cars because I own them. I own two, they cost money, we just had to put some tyres on. Oh my God, I'm not building a blooming thing, Busman's Holiday and beyond now. That is cars, dentistry and bare feet. That's a torture chamber for you. And the instructions are just classic. Absolutely shot back in time again. I was just thinking, the guillotine, as I was saying, was meant to be humane and help preserve reputations in so many respects. But somehow and strangely, we disrespect clarity of mind, particularly when it comes to death. We seem to prefer a messy, slapdash approach to things like execution. We do not like it when it's considered. And I have to say, let me get to the end of this one, people, that the electric chair fills me with horror, but hanging does as well. Either you're just going to dangle there for a long time, or, as happened in Britain, because Britain, particularly in the 1800s and early 1900s, started to take things seriously, and the executioners took great pride in how quick somebody could die. if they miscalculated the weight of the drop, your head could come off, as happened to certain dictators in the Middle East. Well, no, not him, one of his chums. So, yeah, you know, can't just go around sticking a rope over the branch of a tree and yanking on it, can you? So, in many respects, I have respect for the guillotine. Oh, not meaning to be tedious, getting back to making a model. I was just looking at the parts and they're going to be difficult to colour. There aren't great painting instructions. I think usually with these you get a bit of halfway through they say paint. In the written instructions you get, you know, paint this white, paint this blue. But looking at them, I think I'm going to have to make parts of the model and then paint, and then make a bit more and then paint again. And the other thing, when I was a kid, I got this working, so I've got to be able to do that as well, haven't I? Lots of bits and pieces. This board didn't go well because the runners, these beams, one here, one on the other side, were somewhat warped, so a very large layer of glue at that end where there are pins that run into holes, and then once that was dry, and I had to resort to super glue in the end, which I don't like, and then gluing this end with shed loads of glue and a bulldog clip clamp. So this goes on here, flips that way and shoves the person towards the blade. All very lovely, all very mechanical. This on the other hand was fantastic, and no glue used whatsoever, all just clipped together superbly, as other pieces have wanted to do. The basket didn't, so one side is gluing, then I do painting and then glue the other side. Meanwhile, this, the blade, really does want to. I've put a weight in it, a blob of very, very archaic and unwilling to dry milliput. I've had that for years, and it's good use of something that is otherwise useless. And bits of that. Obviously more painting to do. That's where we're up to. So, next step, a bit more painting and see if that thing's sorted itself out. Right, here we have the chopper, and there's the weight ballast, and there's the 4 rollers, one of which hasn't been painted because I temporarily lost it, and I painted the others. I can paint that in just a moment. You may say, well, why didn't you show it when you'd painted it? And it's because it's about the journey. I might as well just show the finished object otherwise, mightn't I? And it's one of those things I've noticed in the comments. Almost every time I make a blunder, there's usually somebody who says, yeah, I did that back in 1981, which is very reassuring. But anyway, here's our mechanism. Well, not mechanism, here's our blade. And it is quite quite nicely done bit of modelling. What's very interesting is, can we see it? There's a hole there to take the loop, and there's a hole there which is matched on the other side, which makes me think, at least in this version, they poured sand in it to give it the weight to drop. I have looked on the internet, and there are so many different versions of the guillotine, I'm not even going to bother fathoming things, but anyway, that's that bit to consider. And I've done the whole thing as a metal box, because that's what it looks like to me. There are many that are wooden, but this one, for several reasons, not least the enormous great bolts. This one looks metal because all the other parts, which appear to be wood, or at least sizable bits of wood, have got grain cut into them, and this hasn't. So I presume it is a metal box, or at least two metal plates holding the rollers and the ballast and the blade. So that's how I'm doing it anyway. There is our little unit done. It all went together nicely, apart from one roller, that one next to the yellow one, and they all popped in really neatly. Apart from that, which I was very surprised at. They're not likely to roll because they're so tight. I haven't used any glue. I suppose you could drill out the holes a little bit, but I'm sure they'd be rattly. I believe getting it absolutely precise is beyond human skills. We'd have to rely on our wonderful friend AI to do it. Or perhaps we just need something sharp and a lot of patience. We can do it, humans, we can do it, but I'm not going to bother now. I've got a tight deadline. And there's our sand hole. Doesn't sound right, but I'm sure that's what it is. Our chute to pour some kind of ballast in. I'm sure they wouldn't waste lead, not during the French Revolution anyway. There it is, time to paint the roller. So far so bleak. I've done a little bit of paler brown spray on most of the framework, just to bring a little bit of highlighting in. Well, you probably can't see it right now. You might see it on the inside of the post. Then there's the top crossbar, there we go. Then that to fit in, then that to fit inside. I haven't painted this side or the other side. Yeah, because I'd like that to rotate, so I'm going to be very careful about how I do it. But the pin is missing, the kind of axle. But we've got plenty of pins, I'll find something. And there we are with our lovely blade fitting. And oh, one other little part. There's that, which holds the lever on, and I daren't paint that right now, and there's no glue used, and it is as tight as a drum, so I will carefully paint that. And there it is. We are making progress. So I'll try and pop all the main parts together and then stop there as an end of part one, and then just leave it for finessing and rigging. How about that as an idea? Yes, you will cry. You've never known such an interesting and engaging election special, have you? Right, there we are, focused at last. What have you been doing, you ask? Well, I found a little bit of lead. Well, not much lead, is it these days? That kind of pewtery lead. I'm not quite sure what it's off. It's off a figure, I think. A little bit of kind of sprue sticking off. I cut it off, put it to one side, and said to myself that'll be useful one day. And lo and behold, there it is, useful. It fits through perfectly, and I could bend it to hold it in place, and it looks like it might be the real thing. Oh, I haven't painted that side. If you know what I mean when I say real thing, it looks authentic. It looks right. So I'm going to leave it. I was going to cut it, but I think I'm going to leave it because it has the right look. So strange progress being made. You've got to admit the comedy value of that shot is superb. But anyway, this is it with most of it on, but not the finessing and the rigging. And that's a really good model. I've balanced the blade on the sort of stock just so we can see it, because it does drop. It drops dramatically, so I think we might have a winner. Oh, and I've got to do the man, which will be for part 2. But there it is. Fantastic. Looking about as grim and as dark as I could possibly get it without throwing tomato ketchup around. Yeah, so far so good. Really enjoying it. Now, some of you may have noticed that I was being absolutely ridiculous and gallows humour, I suppose you might call it, in saying that this is the election special. But as I was putting this film together, I was thinking, do you know, the politicians out there generally, not just in this country, need to be careful, because they're pushing quite hard in some very absurd ways and some very painful ways, I think, for many people. And I wouldn't be surprised if the real machines like this one got rolled out in the near future if they're not careful. There's a lot of elections this year all around the world, happening right now in many cases, and I don't think the establishment characters are going to lie down, perhaps in that case, are going to lie down if their little gang doesn't get one of their people in, regardless of what party they're representing, if you get what I mean. If new and alternative people come in, I think the establishment will kick back and provoke machinery like this returning. I was also thinking, I remember as a kid listening to Radio 1 when it was bearable in the mornings breakfast programme, when Noel Edmonds used to have the golden guillotine, and some silly story would be sent in, and then if he didn't like it, he'd play a sound effect which was the sound of a guillotine blade dropping, a slicing sound and a thump of a head into a basket. And what would he say? He would say, "What a nice bounce." I'd completely forgotten that, but it came back to me just now. Well, anyway, here's part 1. Part 2's on the way. Thank you for your tolerance, and well, yeah, enjoy the coming elections, and do feel free to watch this again.